Hello, and welcome to Outside the Zeitgeist, an opinion podcast presented by Mook Media. Please be aware that the opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of the host platform. Outside the Zeitgeist is funded by people like you, for some reason. And now, here are your hosts, Greg and Charles.
All right, this is Outside the Zeitgeist, episode number 30, and I am your resident misanthrope, Charles.
I'm your resident skeptic, Greg.
And we got Red with us. Say hello, Red.
Hello, darlings.
Who's
Missed
dressed-
you much.
Who's dressed like an Antifa member today.
Yes,
Cheers,
he's
Greg.
very hot. Cheers, Charles.
I'm your 3D waifu,
Don't forget
bitch.
to dislike, share, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, dislike the video to show that the feeling is mutual.
All right, and let's get into the nightmare fuel. And I wanted to start off with that. I just found out a couple days ago that apparently July is Disabled Pride Month.
I'm sorry, wait, hold
What?
up. We got 2 Pride Months, and one of them is specifically for people that are handicapped, that are also gay? Or is it because you're handicapped in some way? And that's... I'm a little confused because I've associated now, because of the media and because of all the bullshit out there, pride means gay.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
queer.
No,
LGBT
it doesn't mean that actually.
Or trans or whatever.
Nope, doesn't mean any of those things.
Oh, okay.
It only refers to the G in the alphabet, people.
I mean, what I kind of wonder, this is sort of like a identitarian advent calendar.
Yeah.
Again, these people acting as religionists or cultists are following the Christian model and creating this advent calendar of identities of the month, you know?
So I guess that since I'm disabled, I'm permanently disabled, I guess that means that what I say has more weight than other people.
That's why we defer
Charles,
you.
your commentary is only important when it actually makes sense.
Which is
Although-
never.
Well, sometimes it does make sense. But because it is Disabled Pride Month. Bound worship!
Wait a second. Does that mean, Charles, that you're going to be gay for the month so we can be celebrating more? I mean, should I worry?
So here's the thing about all these Pride months. First off,
Should
there
be a
is
Pride Month.
there is an old saying that pride comes before the fall. or in the case of lions,
That's
pride,
why they put it in June.
or in the case of lions, pride comes before the mall. But
It's funny about
That was
that.
funny. Thank
Funny.
you. That was really good.
and I don't speak. I'm not going to presume that I speak for every disabled person out there, but I'm going to throw my 2 cents in, since apparently what I have to say matters, because it's my Pride Month now.
Only
that is-
halfway, because you're not gay right now.
Well, what I got to say is, can't you motherfuckers leave us alone? I mean, already you're hearing this, all this ableist stuff is violence. You shouldn't say this because you might hurt a disabled person's feeling. No, saying stuff like that is violence.
When does ADD month come around?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I'd like to jump in on that. I'd like to jump in on any of these crazy, weird Pride months, but not pridefully. I'll do it very subtly.
Humble
I'll
pride?
be there sitting in the background. I'll be, hey,
All right,
hooray! We're moving on.
let me get the rest of this thought out. I say that it's violence because it's really just, when you do stuff like that, you really just take away the agency of other people. You are not giving them the ability to decide if they want to defend themselves and how they want to be defended. And I just forgot the other thing I wanted to say, and now I remember it.
Go on before you forget.
And all of these months really do is they don't help people, which in this case is people in my situation. All they do is hurt us more than anything, because all they wind up becoming is allowing people like me to be used as a tool for somebody to grift money from somebody else, or for somebody to virtue signal, hey, look at me, I'm a nice person, and I don't want to be your fucking tool.
Well, let's be real about this situation. 50 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
Valentine's Day probably meant a lot more to the average person than it does to the average corporation today.
I don't think so. I think isn't it a corporate created holiday? What do you got, Red?
Yeah, because I see your point, because when see, I hate using the word they without identifying who they are, but
It's
when
an ambiguous
grifters
person.
are grifting from this freakish leftist advent calendar, the people who are experiencing the injury or the identity of the month, they're not the beneficiaries of the grifted money. I'm thinking about Black Lives Matter, for instance, where,
Yep.
you know, tens of millions, maybe hundreds, collected, no visibility. One of the co-founders of the movement suddenly goes on a real estate shopping spree,
Yeah.
which is okay because this is cultural Marxism, not economic Marxism. Keep your Marxism straight. And nevertheless, was there a scholarship created? Was there a school district benefited? Were there black business owners rehabilitated and restituted for
Well,
the damage that they experienced?
I'd like to say that I have heard that some local chapters of non-corporatized BLM have done some good,
Oh, good.
but all of the corporatized versions of BLM
Yeah.
have
And
done
it's important to
absolutely
make that.
nothing.
It's important to make that, and it is
Good
important
distinction.
to, you know, in the case of this month, you know, you have things like the ADA and whatnot, and the good that's caused.
You know, Valentine's Day was the wrong thing. Thanksgiving.
there we
Thanksgiving
go.
used to have more meaning than it does now. Now
So-
it's just Thanks Friday.
So, final thought before we move on is, don't tell people what you think is going to hurt me. That's for me to decide. That's my agency, and I'll fight to the death before I let anybody take my agency away from me with my one good arm that I got left. Next topic. You guys know who Mike Gravel is?
I have not heard of the name, but it makes me think of Gravoids from that wonderful movie.
Bells are ringing. Bells are ringing. Charles, bring us
Do
home.
you guys know what the Pentagon Papers are?
Oh, yeah.
So Mike Gravel was I believe at the time, he was-
Pre-WikiLeaks.
Yes. He was a senator, and he ran a committee that he was like the only one of, and he read as much as he could of the Pentagon Papers just to get them into the public record before he got exhausted. He's run for president in the past, and this is one of the few guys that has honestly seemed to have been a force for the people overall and against all the the military industrial complex and everything, more than most other people, I would say. And I just wanted to point out because he passed away recently. So,
Respects to his surviving family.
yeah. So,
And for his memory as well.
the Mike Gravel.
And for his legacy, respects for that.
Next topic is, you guys heard about what's going on in Afghanistan?
I have heard something of it, and it sounds like all bullshit. I've also, I believe, I heard that the U.S. had a base, and they left very quietly in the middle of the night.
Right. Not only that, but apparently they were supposed to inform the Afghan government when they were leaving so that they could come take over the base.
Uh-oh.
And get the very valuable supplies and other associated vehicles and things that they had left behind.
Yeah.
They
which
left those assets behind?
Yeah, which apparently many Taliban members
Ugh.
and whatnot have picked up. And there's also apparently videos of people in the Afghan military handing stuff over to Taliban members and whatnot. There's a lot of questions around the circumstances of that I have, but given the fact that you had Biden bombing recently and what's been going on and all the whole thing, the first thought that comes to my mind is that this is all some sort of propaganda campaign to promote military
Going back?
action. Yeah, promote or staying there, going back. What do you got, Red?
The area was, I think the technical term is fucked up. For decades, hundreds of years, the Russians tried to deal with it. They finally said, fuck it. The French tried to deal with it. They finally said, fuck it. Now the Americans are coming, and now it's time to get GTFO.
I thought the French said "suck it."
Whatever the fuck the French do. So
We surrendered. Oh, wait.
No. Let's not diss seriously. I know that
I'm
that's
joking.
the World War II trope,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I know,
the
I'm
French have a
joking.
very long history
Mhm.
of being serious warriors.
Yeah, I mean, the French
serious
people
warriors.
are certainly doing a lot more fighting for freedom than we have over here.
Hell
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Marine Le Pen, dog. Anyway, so back to this. You know what? Fuck them. Fuck it. As long as they stay the fuck out of our our scope
Bless you.
of our interest. Fuck them. Fuck what they do. Let them determine the direction they wish to take. And if the direction is directly towards hell, Godspeed to you. Fuck you. Fuck off.
You see, that's the exact reasons why I want a direct democracy.
No.
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 You gotta get
Charles.
that shit out of here, man.
Come on.
You gotta get that shit.
I'm not going to stop being a misanthrope.
That's fine, but I will.
Part of what makes you charming.
No direct democracies.
Nobody
We're
will
already
have
too
time
close
to do
a
anything
direct
else.
Democracy with all the bullshit they did last year.
Oh, God. Do you need the Heimlich maneuver?
No, I just need the lick maneuver.
Ew.
Anything more we want to say on that?
No.
Fuck them.
Fuck them. Okay, that's the consensus. Next topic. The NEA website apparently has scrubbed mentions of CRT.
The better to hide it so that way they can teach it in silence.
Kind of
Yeah.
makes it hard for school districts to deny now.
Yeah, I mean,
We're not doing that.
and again, I bring up the point that I brought up in the last episode about like a name being just the name being used and actually being something else. Not to say that it is or isn't in this case, but to let people look into that for themselves. It also makes me think of what BLM had on their website. One of their goals was to eliminate the nuclear family,
Yep.
and then they took that down. And I also had questions about that too, because the nuclear family was based on the origins of the capitalist system and all that stuff.
Well, this isn't the only other website that's immediately taking something down as soon as it's been shown to be extremely negative.
The Smithsonian did that with their panels on whiteness. And
we also had a choir.
oh,
yes.
the
Oh,
choir.
yes. That
Oh,
got
God.
taken down immediately. I also think back to the Green New Deal, in which they had
That's right.
very questionable wording in their 4 pages of bullshit. And one of the words they took out, the groups, was related to airplanes and stuff of that nature.
And what about the direct
Unimportant
payments
stuff.
to people unwilling to work?
I,
Oh, yeah.
I read the original Green New Deal, and what set my alarm bells off was the idea of a smart power grid.
That doesn't exist. That's too much.
No, that they wanted to create as
That
part of
would
the
be
resolution.
God awful.
Yes, it would be god awful. But going back to that choir thing,
Dude. Listening to the whole entire thing.
Yeah, but let's identify which choir it is to start,
it's
because
the, what
there's
is it,
so
the
many.
Los Angeles or San
San
Francisco
Francisco.
gay something chorus. I don't remember what it is. So, but it went up and it got taken down. And the thing about the thing is that we were talking about it before the show, and it's really kind of ambiguous. Really, I mean, I could totally see it being a troll.
I really think it was a troll. I think it was a really good troll.
Mm-hmm.
I could be completely wrong. Maybe it is a group of men telling us that they're going to try and convert children to something.
A play on words on conversion therapy also.
I think the entire thing was one giant troll because the world is in clown world now, according to some people.
Oh,
And
I
in
agree
clown
with that.
world, everything is very funny. I got to tell you, last 4 years, it looks like we're going to have a 5-year streak of just hilarious political, social, media content of all sorts. It's ramping up. We're getting into the heat of it right now.
I
Yeah.
mean, the thing about these trolls is, it's the Babylon Bee problem, that it's so on the nose to what seemingly is reported to the news that it's really hard to tell what's the news and what's the troll.
Yeah, Brian Long's content is kind of the same thing, right?
This stuff is hilarious.
It's great. It's great.
It's its own parody.
There was I believe it was he did this a while back. He did this video of someone who was on the left and someone who was on the extreme right.
Oh yeah, the racist and the
Yes. Yes. So
we're all friends now.
you got this white power guy,
Yes.
and you got this extreme leftist guy, and they're like, we agree on everything, except why we're doing it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Subgenius cartoon again, where the far left and the far right are shaking hands in the middle, and the Sub-G is pickpocketing both.
Yeah, and that leads to the whole thing, like I've said before. I mean, if you focus on the intent more than anything, you're missing out what to walk away from in the situation.
Now, also pretty funny, at least to me, and other people who find my kind of humor funny, is that in the UK, the children have found a way to create false positives on COVID tests using Pepsi.
No way!
Yes.
What do they do?
Oh wait, let's look up the Pepsi stock.
So it was either Pepsi or Coke, but I'm pretty certain it was Pepsi. And I thought it was hilarious because
Wow.
if you can use some sort of cola substance to create a false positive on these tests, I have to wonder how good these tests were to begin with.
Were they tests from China?
I have no idea.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
You're going to have to help me out because I'm brain addled.
Absolutely.
What's the name of that character in One Piece who goes on cola? The
That's,
android?
that's Frankie.
Frankie! It's a Frankie issue.
It must be.
Love you,
So-
Frankie.
It was very hilarious. It was also, it made me start thinking in new ways about, that's interesting. Soda can make the test produce a false positive?
Is it drinking soda and then peeing on the stick or whatever?
No, it's
or is it the
something about
application of
sticking the test into the cola.
Fuck all.
What kind? Is it the regular or is it like
Is it the throat one?
sugar-free
The one up
or-
your nose?
I
The one
didn't
you
look
shit
that far
on?
into it. All I saw was the topic, and I'm like, hilarious.
'Cause I've heard stories of diet sodas peeling paint off of dumpsters.
That might be true.
That can be the
Yeah,
shady
I
girls
think that
too.
was true, actually.
Yeah, I think that was true.
Because it's acid, girls.
Oh yeah, that's acid. What do they use? Aspartame in there?
Yes.
It's a
Terrible stuff.
precursor
Never-
to
never
a
drink anything with
neurochemical.
aspartame.
Anything else you want to say on that?
No.
Okay, so moving on in more of the fun stuff. So I saw this. This came across some Rebel News. So I don't really know. I question Rebel News.
Good.
But
Are they from Canada?
Should
no,
measure,
Australia.
Oh, okay.
It's
question everything.
well, yeah, I question them
Which
more
is the
than
one I'm thinking of from Canada?
I don't know, but this is Avi Yemeni. So, and the other reason why is because they were the only ones that I found the story from. But this guy, he's recording. He's in Australia, and he's recording himself. He's got 3 cops following him, and he's getting arrested. Like he's getting arrested for not wearing a mask, but he's walking in the street, public street, nobody out there.
Yeah, but hold on. You're missing a part of the story here.
What?
Australia has gone even further
Yeah.
extreme than Canada,
Mhm.
and
That's right.
they've leaned so far into the authoritarian state.
Yes, they have.
There's a guy on Twitch I watch. He's from Australia, so he's always streaming at the times of the day that I'm going to sleep at a certain point. And he's always talking about the lockdowns, but he's fully read into the bullshit. He believes everything that's coming out and all that. Nothing against him, but when they say, "Oh, we're gonna lock down because one case," I'm like, "You did this before. It didn't solve anything.
Yeah.
You're doing it again. It still isn't solving anything. What the fuck is wrong with you people?"
And before all this, in Australia, there was a big surrender of people's personal weapons, of guns and rifles and whatnot.
Oh yeah, they've done
They
it.
gave up all their fucking guns. And I don't know, I'm not Australian, nor am I tracking the story, to what extent is there regret for surrendering this?
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say, because it seems like because that's one thing I was going to bring up, because Australia also has like other don't Australia have like you can only travel a certain distance from your home and whatnot.
Oh my God, they're so restrictionist.
And
I don't know.
I don't know if that comes into play in any of it, but this guy wound up getting arrested, and he got fined. He was released like a half hour later, but he got fined $5,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I would object to paying that. I just wouldn't pay that.
Yeah, so like Rebel News is saying they're going to crowdfund for the guy and whatnot. But the reason why I wanted to mention this story as a point of comparison, because you were talking about like Canada and whatnot, because we've had the 4th of July here, and so now you have like all this patriotism and American exceptionalism and everything like that. And one thing I wanted to point out with this is that, you have, America's the greatest country in the world.
According
But,
to who?
well,
Compared to what?
even if it is, may I suggest a point of humility that something being greater by comparison does not mean that it is objectively great by default.
I use this all the time when I try to get people to understand that the words they're using don't mean what they're saying. When I say, and I truly believe this, McDonald's is healthier than Burger King.
Mm-hmm.
I have not made any real statement other than the fact that I believe in some way that the amount of calories or crap that I'm eating from McDonald's is slightly less than if I were to go and buy the same similar meal from Burger King.
Right, because there's standalone facts, there's comparatives, and there's superlatives. What do you got, Red?
Well, it's exactly that, as compared to what, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson, hello.
Yeah.
But the point is, and also Thomas Sowell goes to that too, but as compared to what? Hell yeah, this is a great nation compared to where we were before, compared to other nations right now.
Maybe
Yeah,
compared to
yeah,
the
we are
future?
doing. We don't
I
know
really
the
hope
future.
not.
See, that's the problem with the leftists. They try to compare
Well,
things
no, I mean,
against
I was-
some imaginary utopian actualization. It's like, what are you doing? This is imagination.
Yeah, but I would say that's all around, and people just comparing it to different things.
Interesting note before we move on to the next topic,
Right.
is that since the mandatory buyback in Australia, I've seen people comment and I've heard people speak about the fact that they've been moving further and further towards more authoritarian laws.
Yeah, well, I mean, regardless of whatever mutually beneficial action there is, you have to consider that those mutually beneficial actions may only be good in the short term.
Never trust the Karens in charge.
Moving on to the next topic.
Pfizer, Pfizer, Pfizer. Did I say it enough times? That's 3 times in media, right? Always say it.
Is that
I
like
think-
Beetlejuice?
I was just going to say the same thing. Is that when you magically summon a doctor or something? Or
No, but they are trying to get approval for a 3rd shot. Maybe that's why I said it 3 times.
Three
Trying to get
times the
approval
charm.
For a 3rd shot. This isn't a booster shot, at least not the way the news reported it. And I was hearing on 1015 before I came over, they were talking about this, and I'm like, this is great. This is great. Not only is it great because they're trying to get a 3rd shot, which people have been talking about booster shots for a couple months now, but they also have a lovely tagline at the end where because they only have 64% efficacy. And I'm thinking to myself, 64% efficacy. They were coming out trying to shoot for 95, 95.2, 95.7. And I keep hearing people in the news or people push back.
Mm-hmm.
Pfizer has 95% efficacy, blah, 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 blah. And no one's keeping in touch with the fact that all these variants are reducing the total ability of the Pfizer shot to do much of anything anymore.
Yeah. 2 points that I think it's important to make right now.
Sure.
One is that the efficacy was never about preventing the spread of the virus. It was about creating antibodies in the person.
Mm-hmm.
They explicitly stated that it didn't stop the spread of the virus.
Yeah, people still got it.
And the other thing, too, is...
And also to mitigate the severity
Well,
of
yeah, to
the
mitigate-
Rona illness when you got
Right.
infected.
The other thing, too, is that going back to a talking point of last year, people were saying that the virus mutates faster than others. And I was saying...
I don't believe that.
Well, there's actually... You can actually scientifically argue that because if they're doing gain-of-function research and they're taking this virus and putting more stuff into it, just by the fact that there's more stuff there, there's more chances for mutations to happen.
So, in regards to that, I was reading a transcript of the guy that invented mRNA.
Mm-hmm.
You mean
technology.
its use rather than the creation of the substance?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was reading a transcript by him and someone else, I believe from Epoch Times,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about it. He talked about the fact that, specifically with the mutations, he was saying, I think it was him. He was saying that it's possible that the vaccines themselves are causing the virus itself to mutate, and that is why we have so many mutations, which was interesting because I hadn't
Possible.
heard that point of view before.
That's possible. I mean, because the vector of the mRNA is a different. I mean, they use what is it, inner Ebola virus or some virus that humans don't really get affected by, but they use the idea that viruses will inject DNA and RNA into the human cells.
All I know is when
viruses and bacteria.
Every 2 weeks there's a new Greek letter of the alphabet being used to describe another variant of it.
Mm-hmm.
That worries me as far as not am I actually at risk, but as far as oh shit, we're losing the narrative on what we're trying to push to the public.
And pretty soon they're going to have to move to the Sanskrit alphabet at this rate.
Well, I can just thinking about it now. I can see how, because if you have two different pathogens inserting genetic information into a cell that are using the cells to reproduce these new pathogens, then there is a likely chance that that the genetic information of these pathogens will combine into a newer pathogen.
One last note. So they had Delta, but now they're also claiming there's a Delta Plus variant version of it, which is odd. I think that they found that Delta was the right letter to end on, which is why they're using plus. I don't know. But it's interesting to me that instead of, because I've heard Lambda and I've heard Epsilon, and I don't hear those being talked about as much as I do Delta, and then suddenly Delta Plus.
Maybe after they get to the end of the Greek alphabet, they'll start doing like multiples of letters, like on almost hexadecimal alphabet, but like a letter sequencing, and eventually we'll get to sororities and fraternities of viruses.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I was thinking that perhaps we can go into Newspeak from Orwellian 1984, and it would be Delta double plus good.
I was almost certain that they were trying to launch off of the success of Voyager using Delta.
But what's interesting too is with the shots themselves is that, you know, we talked before about them having all these lotteries, you know, get the shot and, you know, you could win $1 million, and studies have come out to show that
people are not incentivized by money.
Yeah.
On this
prize.
Oh well, I mean, maybe. Oh no, I might have been wrong about my assessment of humanity. Oh, how horrible for me. But you know, beyond that,
you know, consistently, I believe I've talked to people, and people have talked to me, and with the exception of a few very surface level type people who are very what's a good word for that? Superficial.
Yeah, superficial.
Most people are usually not, I think, terribly concerned about money.
Yeah,
they don't really
especially in
care.
a time of extreme inflation. Well,
Yes.
not extreme inflation, but inflation which looks like it might turn into extreme inflation.
it's turning into extreme. I want to talk more on that in a little bit later. But
Okay.
I mean, I myself, I don't really care about money. I need it. I understand why I need it. I want it so that way I can pay off bills and crap. But I don't see money as like a.
It's a tool.
It is a tool. I just don't see it as a driving factor for why I do things. I don't think many people either see that.
Well, to chime in, you know, money is really important if you have kids, you know, for their enrichment and extracurriculars and all their other shit that comes with fucking kids, you know.
But people don't usually get motivated to do things by money. It's
No,
like
they get motivated to do
almost-
shit by their significant others and their goddamn kids.
Right, you could
Pretty
tell.
much.
If I were to tell you, we're gonna give you $10,000 more to do your job, but we're gonna not change anything about it except we're gonna give you more responsibility. Would that make you enthused about the money that you were getting?
Truthfully, I would have to see what kind of a path to next steps beyond that
Right,
are
and
available, because I'm not going to sign up to, I like the money and I frequently enjoy additional responsibility, but if it's a dead end path, I'd be like, eh.
Yeah,
This
I
is
think that's the
I-
point,
I'd
though.
negotiate for a better
That's
deal.
my whole point.
I'd
is that
negotiate
you
for a
didn't
better
leave at the
deal.
money.
I'd negotiate for a better deal, and I'd drive a hard bargain, and I'd make him pay through the fucking nose, and do it with a smile, and be charming, and then go to the bathroom and rub my breast because I'm so excited I got a deal.
Would you do the thing with your nipples?
Not the way you do.
But one thing too is because you know we call it doom spell. Well, I mainly
It's a doom
started.
spell.
Well, we call it the doom spell on the show mainly because of like all the problems with the vaccines and the lack of information and lack of testing and all the situations coming around this. But I heard about the Novavax a while ago, and I did a little bit of looking into it earlier on, and it seems kind of like it might actually be something not horrible. So do we still call it the doom spell?
Well, that's not a doom spell. A doom spell is a word that's...
Or it's
Rather, I should say the doom spell represents the word vaccine, but it's not vaccine at the same time because the mRNA are not actually vaccines, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They are medical treatments that are experimental at best.
Yeah, well, technically they're not vaccines by their own because it doesn't prevent people from getting infected.
This is why I'm not calling it a vaccine. It's
It doesn't prevent the spread, rather.
Should it be called doom-ish spell?
No, it's the doom
Sorta
spell.
doom spell?
You're doomed if you take it.
Well, we
In
don't
one way
know
or
that for
another.
real. We don't know that for real.
No.
Questions abound.
What I'm saying is, if you're taking it, you're doomed as an individual because that means you're easily susceptible to information that may or may not be true.
Yeah, that's the other reason why we've been calling it that too. I mean, it's a whole bunch of things, but
There's so much about it that I...
You know what cracks me up? When you're going through your day and minding your own business and doing the things you need to do, and people just assume, of course you got the vaccine. So they treat you that way and they speak with
Of
you
course
as
you're
though
one of
that's
us,
the
'cause you're
case.
not-
Because the assumption is that, if you're perceived to be a good person, of course you did this.
Except less than 60% of everyone in the population got.
But
Dude,
that's
yes.
the exercise and extent of solipsism here.
yeah.
It's a great exercise. I exercise my right to walk into any restaurant or any sort of store without a mask at any given time.
I
Yeah.
exercise my right to party and I regret the way that people have been using that song.
I wanna rock.
But so moving on. So apparently, we've talked about the Maricopa audit.
Woohoo!
Apparently, it's from what it seems like, and I haven't looked too far into this, but it looks like it's trying to be done in by sexual harassment allegations.
Oh.
But the other thing too is that the one I'm going this based off Nick Ricada, and he's good with the information that he puts out. I don't agree with his opinions and his interpretations, but the information he puts out, he does his research.
Okay.
Is that the Minnesota guy?
Yeah, the Minnesota guy.
Yeah.
And he he's a lawyer and all that stuff. But he was saying that YouTube, he tried to put out the video a couple times, and YouTube kept flagging the video for being sexually explicit.
Sexually explicit.
Yeah, and the only thing he was really doing was mentioning sexual harassment or showing the article, talking about it. So I'm just like, what the fuck is that all about? I mean, is there something that they're trying to hide? There's
always stuff they're trying to hide.
Well, yeah, that's true. But on the flip side of that, we have some other news involving things like YouTube, which involves a former president.
Yes, Trump, wonderful Trump, or awful Trump, or disgusting Trump, best Trump.
How about one awful?
The goat.
One awful Trump? Is that kind of?
However you want to describe Trump, I describe him as a
Just
qualified
Trump.
idiot.
Just Trump. I think that's enough to make specific whom we refer.
However you want to describe him, Trump is making
Sorry, qualified idiot. That's great.
He's making big waves with his
I prefer
with
King
his
Troll.
suing of big tech companies. Apparently, he's going after Facebook, Twitter,
Excuse
and
me.
what was the last one?
What, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube?
YouTube.
YouTube. Look
yeah.
at that. Look at that.
Yeah, so he started a class action suit.
Yes,
No.
I'm excited to see how far this will actually go. I don't think it'll go much of anywhere, but as Tim Pool says, in order to start the fight for staying on platforms for freedom of speech and everything, you actually have to fight.
Yeah, and it's not, it's not just for, like, conservatives. That's the other point. I mean, I got called a right-winger the other day, which I'm
You
like...
did? Oh my God! I wish
Why,
I'd been
who?
there. I would have laughed.
Who told you were a right winger?
And I'm just, and it's just the other thing, the liberals and conservatives, they laugh at me because I'm different, but I'm different.
You know
but I
what the
laugh at them
joke
'cause
is?
we're all
We're all heterodox here. We
yeah,
tend
we're
to.
all just people.
Yeah,
man,
yeah. But Steve Turley has an interesting take on it. Is that this is part of like in different nations, part of the backlash against all this social media that is presuming to supplant national law across the respective countries.
Yeah. The the other thing somebody else brought up, I forget who, is that apparently the House Judiciary Committee is also deciding they want to take actions against big tech. So
Excellent.
that looks like something that might actually have teeth to it.
So not only is all this going on, but still in the background that I'm keeping an ear to the floor on, is the fact that Crowder is still pursuing, I believe, a lawsuit against YouTube and other tech platforms.
Don't forget Project Veritas.
So Project Veritas is pursuing these. They've had a very big success in that they were able to keep the lawsuit with Twitter in the lower courts as opposed to it being transferred to a federal court, which is good.
And that's the one thing, like with too, is why I do kind of want to have this show taken off the, taken down by YouTube and whatnot, is because, yeah, sure, I got bad opinions. Let's,
No. You just have opinions. They
Actually,
have bad
okay.
thoughts about your opinions.
I don't. Let me rephrase that. I don't really have opinions because I try not to make opinions, and I won't go into all that because Red wants to say something.
Excuse me.
I have
Everything you say
perspectives.
is opinionated.
We have 30 episodes saying that you have opinions.
You have 30 at least opinions.
Okay. I do make opinions. I try not to have opinions overall.
You can't
What?
not have opinions, man.
I'll get into that maybe in the future.
Your
But
episode
go
I
ahead.
can't not proves that you can't have.
Okay, turnabout is fair play. Very good. A very good argument, Greg. I will have to think about that. Go ahead, Red.
Yeah, and with respect to Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, offer still on the table, dog. Mwah!
But Tucker Carlson.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah, this is great.
He gets another blowjob
Now here's
for
the thing.
Tucker at Swallow.
Here's the thing, right? Because so Tucker Carlson came out and said, "Yeah, I wanted to have an interview with Putin," right? And so that proves that the NSA had reason to spy on him, and make him a target, and so forth. In theory,
In
right?
theory.
I was watching the Keith Olbermann thing. It's like, oh, Tucker. More likely thing is Tucker's a useful idiot. And what? Here's my question.
I believe I heard that. I think he's an idiot for saying something like that.
Here's my question on this whole thing. What if Tucker Carlson did all this knowing that it would come back around this way? Suspecting it would
That
come
would be
back.
very interesting. I've heard other really good takes on this. The fact that Tucker was able to get in front of it is really strong because for the last few weeks they've been trying to paint him as the new target.
Yeah.
Because there was a few weeks back they were saying Tucker Carlson is the new Donald Trump. And then they had a segment, Tucker Carlson is the new Alex Jones. So
Make up your mind.
if there was some sort of plot behind the scenes going on against him, where they were going to put him as the new target of sorts, and he had not been able to get ahead of this, there's a possibility they could have easily used any of this stuff against him as a way to just denigrate him.
Yeah, and the other thing I think of too is that Tucker Carlson is still Fox News,
Yep.
and Fox News is still the Con 6,
Yep.
so I don't trust anything of
And
Well, yeah,
Tucker's
you
show
should've.
keeps beating the pants of the other legacy corporate media types.
Yeah.
And Greg Gutfeld's show is beating out all the late night TV shows. So I imagine, I don't know, I'm not in their little boardrooms and shit. I imagine they're sweating it.
They're sweating for a different reason because
They have many reasons to
all
sweat.
the independent media groups,
Yeah.
every one of the groups that I watch, and I know there's even more of them, but all of the independent media are collectively, or
Beating that
sometimes
crap.
individually, beating out the numbers that any of the Con 6 get.
I love it when Tim Pool says, I'm not boasting, but, and then he goes
Yeah.
into it.
Yes.
It's like, okay, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back to the cannot not thing, but speaking of independent media, I was watching James Corbett. Now, he's like, oh, don't watch my videos on YouTube. I watch his videos on YouTube when they're up there. His one channel got taken down.
Oh.
That's a shame.
But I watch him. But that's why I watch him on YouTube, because of so I can see when like YouTube and what YouTube is taken down, so I can see it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday he had a video from his backup channel taken down, and it was when he was talking with Whitney Webb. So James Corbett, Whitney Webb, Jason Burmis, they're all very good independent people that whose names don't really come up a whole lot. Luke Lukowski's name comes up, but and one of the things they were mentioning too, and this kind of goes back to the the doom spell, right? And how we talked about the mRNA is kind of like, I've mentioned before, like you can consider the mRNA treatments to be overglorified CRISPR, and
You could.
and Whitney Webb was pointing out in that conversation that a lot of people there are a lot of cases of people that have taken CRISPR that now have huge genetic problems
I'm
that
not
they can't get rid of.
surprised. You try fucking with your genetic code.
Mm-hmm.
That's not. You're playing God at that point. In a sense,
In a sense.
in a sense,
Yeah, and it's the whole Gattaca thing, right?
I was
Yes.
about to go there, Charles.
that's a good movie.
Jinx.
Yeah. Right, and this is like Jason Burmis, points out the whole transhumanist agenda with genetic modifications and
Mm-hmm.
implants and cybernetic and mixing biology and machinery and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, really, that's one way to protect against AI, is to meld with the technology
Or
in a
become
way
controlled
so that
by it. It goes both ways. That's the problem.
well, this is why we're fighting these fights.
Mhm. And having these discussions.
Elon.
Yeah, Elon. Speaking of fights, so here's a court thing that happened recently.
A court thing.
Yeah. So, because we hear about you had the George Floyd thing and whatnot, and apparently the Eighth Circuit ruled on this decision, and if I remember correctly, they did a summary judgment dismissal on qualified immunity, and the Supreme Court turned around and summarily dismissed the the Eighth Circuit's decision. So what all that means is the Eighth Circuit, if I get this correct, the Eighth Circuit looked at the evidence and said, oh well, the evidence is so overwhelming we don't really need to go into it. We're just going to make a decision. And the Supreme Court turned around and said, no. And from what they wrote, it kind of sounds like, oh, we think this qualified immunity thing is getting out of hand, and we should probably start taking a look in.
What was this in reference to?
This was a cop had somebody down.
I thought you were going to say something about cops.
Yeah, because like I said, it was a George Floyd, similar to a George Floyd situation, and I've talked about qualified immunity before. As a general idea, here's the problem with qualified immunity is, I think that there's a possibility that they didn't take the idea, the whole
How
stock.
usable?
No, the what was that college stock? What?
Stockholm syndrome.
No, not. I want to say Stockholm syndrome. Stanford. The Stanford.
Stanford.
The Stanford experiment. The whole allowance of qualified immunity. How much of the Stanford experiment is really taken into this whole thing of qualified immunity?
Can you explain the Stanford experiment?
So
Because I'm
the
trying to
Stanford-
follow what you're saying.
Yeah, the Stanford experiment is where they had a bunch of people. Pretty sure this is one. They had a bunch of people, students. They made some of them inmates and some of them guards, and things turned into a shit show because the ones that were the guards that had all the power started abusing the ones that were the inmates.
Okay.
So,
Well, I think that's a general problem with power itself.
right.
I think.
And that's where I was bringing qualified immunity into it, because it kind of gives this presupposition of untouchable power in these situations, at least in my perspective. What do you guys think?
I think any power that's unchecked, there's a very small amount of individuals that I wouldn't even count myself among that can use power or some sort of power to their most altruistic ability. I would not say that most individuals are inclined to using power in ways that are only good for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people find ways of using power that they think is good for other people, but usually has some sort of self-serving interest.
Yeah,
Some people can be good with power, but if you give them too much of it, I find inevitably over time it degrades.
Yeah, that's the thing with like between the cops and the responsibilities that are put on them, teachers and and CRT and like Common Core and all that stuff. I've heard a lot of stories where people don't want to do this stuff, but they need to protect their jobs.
Responsibility is one of the toughest skills that someone can learn.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do not have responsibility, and so they do not know.
Are you confusing responsibility with diligence? Meaning
No, it's both. It's a little bit of both.
Mm.
People can't take responsibility for things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the ability to put something on you, right? To claim that it's your fault that something happened, whether it be good or ill, is most people only want to take credit for the good stuff. They don't want to take credit for the bad stuff. So they keep moving forward, and whenever something bad happens, if there's an easy scapegoat, they say, oh, it was that guy's fault, or the reason why this happened was X, Y, or Z. It was something I think I did when I was younger. I've tried less and less to do that as I got older. It is always a struggle to try and recognize how you yourself are somewhat at fault in a situation, and the responsibilities you have to make things right, or what you're supposed to be doing at any given time.
Yeah, before we get to Red, they'll just say the evil that men do lives after them, and the good oft lies interred with their bones. Go ahead, Red.
Oh wow, damn Charles.
Yeah, I threw some Shakespeare out there.
So wow. So Gregory, you laid out a lot, and I won't go through unpacking the whole thing. But I think this has to do with in part, with the cultural movement towards group rights, meaning that things are owed to you because things in the past, and because it's on a group basis, an identitarian basis. It doesn't have to do with your contributions or how you positioned yourself in that group. It does not have to do with merit, because group rights, because you don't want to stigmatize or in any way lessen somebody who has failed, because unequal outcomes are evil in and of themselves, and they're read to be primarily presumed to be on account of race.
Yeah, but how much, like, even with merit, how much of merit is subjective, and how much really, when we try to determine equal outcomes and so forth, it's like we're using subjective ideas to objectively define other subjective ideas to have a subjective idea of equality.
Equal outcomes are to be avoided at any cost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. And there's a big body count to back that recommendation.
So,
we should probably move on to
yeah,
the next
well,
one, because we could get stuck.
two things more on a lighter topic, very light. Biden's best contribution, in my mind, is that he can eat ice cream.
Can he?
Good for him.
He
Does
can.
it-
He makes great choices according to the media.
I mean, I saw the video clip of it. It looked like he was like mouthing it, like.
Yes,
Oh,
I saw someone do
gross.
a wonderful edit of that where it looked like he was blowing the ice cream.
Yick. Biden the fluffer.
I mean, it.
It might have even just been him doing it and on loop. I don't even know. It looked like it was in real time or something like
I know.
that.
I think I saw that same clip too, and it looked like he's hesitating over it, thinking, "Is this going to make my dentures hurt?"
Brain freeze.
But I believe this is like the
brain freeze.
third or fourth segment that the media has done covering Biden getting ice cream.
They're running
I
out of
just
material.
don't understand why.
Because
Is
when you
this
show real
newsworthy?
material, because when they show real material, it gives a very strong appearance of cognitive impairment.
I must say that the article that they did must have been last year or the year before that on Donald Trump posting his face on top of Sylvester Stallone's body was a much better article, even though both articles literally were not news. They were not news. Nobody gives a shit about this.
Yeah, I mean, and you see everybody do this. One group of people will glorify X person, the other group will vilify them, and you see it with Trump and Biden and everybody else and everything. And really, it's all just bullshit. It doesn't matter. Now, me personally, I love a good ad hominem. I think, especially when it's good. I mean, look at me. I look like, some people say I look like a cross, like, if Will Ferrell and, what's the other guy's name? The one from Superbad. The stoner guy.
Seth Rogen?
Seth Rogen, yeah. Some people say that I look like if Seth Rogen and Will Ferrell had a love
funny.
Look,
child.
I'm going to take that away from you because people always compare me to Seth Rogen. So I have the Seth Rogen look.
Maybe you
can't
should
have
call
anything about
Gregory
Seth Rogen.
Daddy.
Daddy.
Fuck off. Get a real job.
But I love ad hominems, but people try to use the fact that people make mistakes and people pointing out mistakes is somehow an attack on a person's character.
No, it is not.
I don't get that. I mean,
It's because
it's
everyone
fun to
has
point
feelings.
these things. Yeah, but it's fun to point these things. I mean, when people fuck up and it's hilarious, it's fun to point those things out. When people fuck up and it's not hilarious, it's still it's worth pointing out.
It's productive.
Right,
and
it's productive.
P.S. I miss you, Carpet Dunktum. I'm really sad that you've been so deeply canceled.
Now, other interesting
He's funny
thing
AF.
regarding food is that apparently calling food exotic is racist. I don't make shit like this up.
Who made that shit up?
Oh, I'm dying.
This is.
Who made that shit up?
Let me look up who wrote the
Oh,
article.
no, it was I saw the article. It was some article.
It's hilarious.
Obviously, I've been not paying attention because I mean,
I love, like I said,
it addles the mind.
The last 4 years, plus this 5th year now, some of the best bullshit content ever. We are in the golden age of comedy right now.
I think
we don't. I mean, in a way, you could say we don't need people like John Candy and George Carlin
Washington
anymore.
Post, the
Yeah,
WAPO,
that's right.
of course, the Bezos publication.
Yeah, we don't. You could almost say we don't need like John Candy and George Carlin and them anymore because life is doing all the comedy for us.
Look, I'm not even going to read the article. The first line of Google's little blurb of it, how exoticizing food reinforces xenophobia and racisms. Quote, your offerings tend to be exotic foreign cuisine that we wouldn't even ... Really? This is what you guys think is real news?
it's a distraction from the real shit.
The printed publications are going downhill. The best part about this article is the fact that they put a hamburger that's all faded and off color as the image of what they're calling exotic.
Is that an advertisement for McDonald's or?
It has to be. It has to be. Why would you use sushi is more exotic than a hamburger will ever be.
I made chicken paprikash the other day. Is that an exotic food?
It is because I don't know what the fuck that is.
It's a Hungarian dish.
I have sushi far more often than hamburgers.
Yes, but sushi is exotic by comparison to a hamburger. And
Not
I
when
love-
it's in the fucking supermarket.
Look, when I was young, exotic to me meant hot because it was used in reference to women.
I must be very exotic.
Actually, I when I was in the Navy, one of the officers I was talking to, she was Filipino, and she was telling me, oh, my husband says he likes me because he thinks I'm exotic and he doesn't want me to cut my hair, and I'm like, oh my god, how many split ends do you have? All right,
Whenever anybody calls me exotic, I kind of wonder, have you been to Washington Heights? There's like fucking thousands of people who look like me, dog.
Yeah. Jewish. So let's get into the main topic here, and this is Greg's topic, career affair. So take it away, Greg.
I'll be honest, I need a reminder.
You guys make me do all the fucking work.
Yeah, well.
This is your topic about job searching and.
Oh yes. Your titles are very not intuitive, and like I'm trying to remember why we decided on certain topics, and then your titles don't make any sense.
When it's my title, look, I take notes.
Shut up. So, I find the entire job searching, just jobs in general, the people do not take jobs seriously. They don't take anything about their career seriously. At least
which
the
people?
average individual.
Because I think we can attack that from multiple, or analyze that from multiple. Instead of attack for whatever.
So
reason.
my outlook on this is ever since I started what I consider a career in retail, which is when I got out of college and I needed a job, and I was like, I'm going to take this seriously because I want to see if I can't make an actual career out of this, because I wanted to learn from the experience of working in retail what it would be like to open up a retail store Because a dream of mine when I was younger was to have a comic book / card game type store where I would run tournaments, I would sell product. Hopefully, I would make a lot of money doing this. And my dream was eventually to try and get it to where it was a big box type of store thing. Because I believe personally that card game stores and comic book stores, people have not solved the formula for why or how a store like that could work at a more corporate type of level. And I think there's room for a store like that to grow into where you could have, this is like Greg's Card Emporium or something like that, and it's in every city or something like that. The unfortunate thing is that any type of business, no matter what you're doing, is really tough to start, which is what I've learned in almost any exercise that I've engaged in to try and start a business of any sort.
We had to create a business for this podcast.
Sure. Creating a business is tough. Making it profitable is even tougher. Getting it to the point where it can be as big as like a Walmart or a Target is even tougher than that. It's just the thing of numbers. The amount of businesses that ever get to that point is very, very small. Less than a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of stores that ever get to that point. But I thought there was a market for that. So that was one of my dreams when I was younger. I've moved it into a different area now, this being one of them. But I find people don't take their jobs seriously. And when I say that, I think people who are getting into jobs, or even people who have been in jobs for quite some time, they just don't consider their job to be a career, which is a serious problem. Because if you're not looking at your work, what you're doing every day, for at least 5 out of 7 days a given week, as an actual career, you put it to the side as if it's this thing that you have to do just so you can live. And so you're not considering the fact that, this is serious business. This is something that I should be really trying at to become better, because the only way I'm going to make more money is either A, moving up in my corporation that I'm working at, or the business I'm working at, or B, doing a different movement to take the skills that I learned at one place and translate it into a better job at another place. What you got, Red?
Yeah, I was listening to what you were saying, and I gotta agree with it. And the concern that I have is, and I'm not castigating all millennials into one sweeping move here, but
Why not?
this because
You
it's
should
not
always
the
do
right
that.
thing to do, because it's not real. But this over focus of what can the employer do for me? What can you do for my work family, work life balance? What can you do for the employer offering a mission with which I can agree? And it sort of like inverts the relationship from what value can the employee render versus what can the employer do for me. And I think that's part of what's contributing to what you're describing, Gregory.
So, one of the biggest things that I always notice at every job I've ever worked, and I've worked in at least 6 or 7 different retail settings. I've worked at a place called Gembro, which is this very small, I don't know if they even still exist, but it was sort of like a small, tiny version of what you would consider a variety store, like a Walmart of sorts,
I don't remember
except
it.
in a much, much smaller setting. I've worked at the Gap, I've worked at a Bob's Discount Furniture, I've worked in a lot of places. The one thing I've noticed about many things, many of the jobs I've worked, is that there's always an overwhelming amount of people that do not have a focus of their job itself. They're focused on other external things. They're like, I'm not going to work here forever. I'm going to be eventually getting my real career, which will be some sort of abstract music or art or something that they're going to do.
Right. And to that extent, that's what Coinbase, and there was one prior employer that did this, that basically reminded employees, look, we're here for the purpose of achieving a value for the employer, which is trying to sell a product to its customers and offer the best value in the market. So we remain competitive. So all these side conversations having to do with personal causes and politics and so on, that's not work, and that needs to be moved outside the workplace. I was hoping to see more employers take that beat. That's yet to be determined, but so far it's down to those 2 employers, Coinbase and Basecamp is the other one.
Now, there's also been, I believe, a move by the corporate overlords, as I describe them, in the last 30, 40 years, and at least in a retail setting, I can't speak of from an office setting because I've never worked in an office myself, but from a retail setting, there has been a huge move, and it's decades long. They've gone from getting people to work for them for many, many years to the point where they only want to take the cheapest labor force, and they don't really care about how that labor force actually works for them. They just care that there's a body there that can do work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I see it in all the places I've worked. The people that really care about their employees are the local managers that manage the store itself. They care about who they hire. They care about the people that are working in those stores. But at a corporate level, you see that they don't really consider the individuals or the employees themselves. And so not only is it the employees that don't care, but I would say that there is a move to make it so that they don't care, and it makes it easier to get rid of people who are just not productive individuals. It disappoints me. There's no more of this "we are family working together to do something" kind
Unless
of thing.
it's a talking point.
Well, yes, unless it is a talking point.
Well, there's a bifurcation, Gregory, among employees, right? Because of automations, machine learning, AI, there's the cohort that becomes more easily replaceable, right? Versus the cohort that are the knowledge workers, and those two classes, talk about castes, are treated very differently.
Mm-hmm.
That might be true, but the replacement of people we're still decades away before we replace anybody in any serious capacity. I think the last serious replacement was.
It's in the works.
It's coming. What I'm saying is that
It's in the process.
we are in
yeah.
the process of replacing one single position right now. Okay, that position is cashiers. Cashiers will no longer be a job of any importance at a certain point in time. Instead, what they will do is they will replace all the cashiers with a couple of security type people who are watching over all of the registers.
Well, I mean, that already started with vending machines.
Well, no. What vending machines are very.
It's
there, but that
no, in a way it replaces cashiers.
that didn't replace cashier. That replaced small vendors that are on just like the street,
little
that are selling
kiosk.
weird
Right.
things. That replaced a cashier of sorts, but that more of replaced a business, like a small business.
Gregory, I think you're going to be seeing this more and more white collar knowledge jobs too, because consider this. The new vibe in programming software is low code, no code programming, meaning that there's so many already developed modules that have been tested and used in so many cases that it's pretty stable. The technologists pretty much know what they're going to do in various environments, and it enables the very little knowledge computer programming people to basically use them like Legos. Mm-hmm. You have an activity that needs to be organized in this way. Let's snap these different modules together to accomplish this particular task or objective that we have in mind. Clickety, clickety, click, click, test, good to go. And you're seeing that, for instance, already in website development. You can simply go to a website to create your own website, and it gives you modules that you can put together to
scripts.
Create this. It used to be the case that you had to hire a pretty, somewhat muscular
Or you
nerd
do
to
what
do
I
this
did,
for you.
Learn HTML and Java.
No longer
That
the case.
That is definitely one of the many things that's coming down the pipeline.
Yep.
It's already in the works. It's being tested. It's being utilized
It's already being
in some
used.
fashion. I don't think they currently replace those positions. There's a pseudo replacement of certain positions, but
Beginning.
So let me throw my 2 cents in here
Sure.
while I get the chance. On the aspect of replacing the white collar jobs, yeah, I expect that to be replaced with AI that's shitty at first, gets better over time. But again, I want to point out that everything's still hackable. So how quickly do we wind up going back to having people in those
Right.
positions? The other
you'll
thing,
be hackable soon. They'll just put
that's
put a little thing in there.
transhumanism.
Yeah.
The other thing too about like workers in general is one thing I've noticed over the course of my life is as everything gets more and more corporatized, there's a general lack of ownership, desired and also ability to have ownership being given on the individual workspace, and that's something. Well, like, it's like, hey, if I can't make this mine and make it more homey of what I'm doing at my job, why I'm not going to enjoy it. If I'm not going to enjoy it, you can have all the rah rah. Let's have the little fucking chance and suck each other off, circle jerks that you want, but people still aren't going to be happy at their jobs.
So that brings me to another point of mine. I think back to the 1800s. Okay, if in the 1800s, the average family, I would say, probably already had some sort of career path set for them by their parents. If you were a boy, your father; girl, your mother.
Well, let me interject here. So a lot of times throughout up until like the 1900s,
This is what I'm saying.
the people would have children to help facilitate the labor on their farms or whatever.
Right. So my point being is that 1800s and before, most people would follow in the footsteps of their parents and take over the business of what they were doing.
And that's how last names came around, like
Yes.
Thatcher and
Smith.
Smith and
Right. So all of these, if you go back 120 plus years to when it was in the 1800s, in the early 1900s, you have an overwhelming amount of individuals. They don't own a lot, but what they do own is the capability and skills to have their business. Now, at that point, we were transitioning from a less industrious society into a more industrious society. We'd already gotten to the Industrial Revolution by that point. We had factories and such to a large degree. But people have always worked for people. But for the most part, if you were in a particular job, your sons and daughters would also go into the same kinds of jobs. And if you owned that business, then your sons and daughters were going to take over that kind of business as well. Now, in contrast to the early 1900s and any time before then, now most people do not go into any particular job that their parents did unless they have strong familial relationships where they're encouraged to continue the line of whatever.
yeah,
right?
you see it, and you see a lot of like divestment from the career field, and it winds up driving families to move far apart from one another too.
Absolutely. This is a big issue I've noticed over time is that the fact that most people are not learning a career or a skill from their parents, and now they're going to public schools, which are both good and bad in some sense, and then eventually they're going off to the college, the new third level of education that people must have, even though it doesn't seem to produce much of anything at this point.
Yeah,
We're getting a lot of people that have no direction in life, and they're trying to get a job to pay bills that they've been saddled with because they believe that by getting a degree
Because they were
it would
humbled.
allow them to.
They were swindled into
Yes,
thinking.
it's
in some sense.
What was the name of that movie where the kid starts the school as kind of like a thing because he couldn't get into the one school, and it's got what's his name, the comedian in it, and he's like yelling at him, and he's like, oh, kids trying to do the one thing that everybody tells them they need to do or something like that, and he's like, to get a good job,
I don't know which one you're
I
on.
have no idea,
The only
Charles.
thing I
God.
can think of right now
It'll
is
come to you
School Drop, but I
later
know that's
after
not
we
it.
finish the podcast.
Yeah, that's what'll come to me. But
It will. It's always when it
it's
comes to
what's his name? He was on like the Daily Show a lot, and he's like yelling at the screen, and blah 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 blah, and he's got the glasses. Oh,
It'll come to you later. I have no
John
idea what you're
Oliver?
talking
no,
about.
not John Oliver. Older guy.
John Stewart?
No, I think his name started with a D. But
Daniel Day-Lewis.
no. God,
Wow,
man,
that's two D's.
so horrible with names sometimes. But
But
so let me, if you don't mind, let me
Go
interject
ahead.
something here before you get away from what you were talking about before, too far away from it, because you mentioned like the whole passing down the trade from family and
Yes.
whatnot, and this is one thing like in the job market, that whole idea winds up carrying through from what I can see in the job market. Because if you wind up going into a career field, you wind up getting pigeonholed into that career path.
yes.
And not a lot of people realize that these career paths have a lot of similar things and have a lot of interchangeable skills. Because most of the people doing hiring are HR people that don't really actually do this stuff. And I've actually, it's funny. Then you have a situation because like most of the work I've done is technical, and I've seen job offerings where the requirements in the job offerings were for technologies or programs. They'll say 10 years requirement on this thing, and it's only been out for a year and a half.
Really?
This
is terrible. Yeah, this is another
so
point
real, Charles.
Of contention I have with jobs in general. There is at the beginning when you try to even get a job, there's all these requirements that they want you to have and such. And I've learned, even though I haven't necessarily completely internalized it, but I've learned that job requirements are bullshit.
Yep.
Okay?
They are.
They are completely bullshit. They're ways of scaring people off from applying for jobs. And they're also ways that they can easily say, okay, this person is definitely not a hire for us, regardless of whether that person actually is an intelligent individual who would be able to learn the skills or even perform the skills. It's simple ways that they can disqualify someone, so that way they don't have to consider someone.
Let me add on something, and then we'll get to you, Red. Going along with that, because in my field too, a lot of people get tested for the job positions, and these tests, they're usually limited to specific parts of technologies that you don't work in a lot, but the fundamentals are the same in other ways. So these tests wind up falsely disqualifying people as well. Go ahead, Red.
Well, the experience of applying for jobs through automated funnels at websites and so on basically forces a situation where everybody who gets through the funnel is near identical and near not distinguishable from the other candidates. So a lot of hiring managers end up complaining, you've given me many different versions of the same person and I'm not quite sure I like any of them. So it's frustrating for the hiring managers. From the point of view of the applicant, they experience multiple layers and sequences of interviews again without getting a determination on the job. And, not so long ago on LinkedIn, a post went very viral where an individual very publicly withdrew their application from consideration because they were tired of going through round 3, round 4 of the never-ending interview cycle.
Yeah.
This is my point about, once again, it brings back to the fact that corporations are not looking to hire family, okay? Corporations are not looking to hire people that they actually want to keep. It disappoints me to say that, but the corporations are only ever looking for one thing. They're looking for, are you going to make my bottom line better? And
that's always been the case. That's capitalism.
That has always been the case, but it's even more so now than it was
I would say
50, 60, 70 years ago.
I don't know about that.
No, it definitely is, because the relationships that you had with your bosses at the higher levels, with the corporation, when it was less individuals involved, right? When there was a smaller corporation, there is a better relationship that you have with anybody you're directly connected with. You form a better working relationship with you and your boss and your coworkers than you do with anybody who is outside of that circle of people. And once it gets too far separated, there is a sort of very cold treatment of the individual. They're like, okay, this person performs this well. Their numbers tell me that they can do this. Until they get to know you, you're nothing but a number at that point.
I think that's legit.
If I, we'll get to the end in a second, Red. I'll just say this. If I had to put my perspective on it, I would say what corporations look for most is people that they can consider as fungible assets.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Well, we need to make a distinction between, because I think everything you're saying, Gregory, is right on the money for revenue generator, individual contributor roles, right? I think that's totally legit. When it comes down to the leadership, the people who are going to form the vision and execute it for current iteration and next iteration for revenue stream, there's a different funnel, and it's very metricized. It's very driven by tests. It's very driven by quote unquote coaching that really is a very prolonged psychological metricized examination process, and it's freaky AF.
Examination and alteration. You could
It's
almost say.
examination, dissection, getting to know
Right.
you, not just on the basis of psychometric testing and your performance in a number of case studies. It's also personality fit, value composition. It feels highly intrusive.
Can I just throw out the possibility that maybe all these metrics and everything we do are really just causing more problems and causing all these systems, like all these things we have, to fall apart rather than actually being part of the process, the productive process?
We as a society have decided that for some reason the best way to deal with people is to reduce people to numbers and statistics, and because of that, we only use those as considerations for something. I would say that is the fault of both capitalism and meritocracy in some regard, because both of those at a certain point, if you stretch really far down the line of one of those things, it's the only thing that becomes important is how much better is one thing over another as far as a capital standpoint.
And not really to go off on a tangent, but we can say things like, ideologies, political or otherwise,
Yes.
Sure.
and everybody gets reduced to one thing.
Now, I don't believe that most of my coworkers that I've ever worked with have ever really considered things of this nature. I don't think they've ever really thought of things like this. I mean, maybe one or two of them is thinking at the same level as all of these intricate stuff. But most people are not, I think, thinking about the fact that I'm just a number. But in the back of their mind, they know subconsciously that they're not important to the system. And that has led to just a couple generations, now our current generation and the next one, that are just not enthused about trying to work at certain types of jobs, whether it be an office job, a retail job, a service job, whatever. And so they're not committed to trying to learn a career that they don't want to become involved with. They're just, this is a job, it gives me money.
Death of a salesman. What do you got, Red?
I still remember my student ID number from all those years ago, and that cracks me up.
I remember my Nintendo Power subscription number.
There you go.
I didn't have one of those, and I don't care about my student ID. Those are unimportant things to me.
I know, that's why it's stupid.
Yeah.
Remembering stupid shit.
Okay, so we gotta wrap up because Red is pressed for time. Instead of a normal outro, there's something we're gonna put out, and that is we might be either taking a hiatus on the show or might not be doing it anymore. I've been having issues. I've also been noticing things about myself that I don't like over the past couple of weeks, especially.
Oh, no.
And I had a scare on some things a couple weeks ago, too. And there's a lot of stuff for me to deal with, which I guess now officially makes me the drama queen of the group.
We love you, Mark. We love you.
Wow. Wow, Red with all the names. Except
My
for the right one.
my brain seized up, but I do love you, Charlie. I am just addled.
Oh my god.
Maybe I should
You're not
take a
even
hiatus.
drinking.
You can't even write this shit.
I have to maybe take a hiatus myself.
So, Greg and I and Red also, we'll all have a talk. We like having these conversations. We like having the fact that, the three of us, I think you can pick up that we come from different backgrounds and we have different ideas walking into things. And what I think I can speak for all three of us that we enjoy is the fact that, we can get past all that and still have decent discussions, and especially coming from me because, I'm the misanthrope. I hate people. I hate all of you. Fuck you all.
Except me.
No, I hate you too.
No, fuck you too then.
But realistically, and I will say this, realistically, that's not entirely true because, as a general rule, it's don't hate the player, hate the game. I can't hate people. I don't find it beneficial to hate people because then you want to try and change them, you want to try and mold them, or you want to try to dismiss them or do whatever to make them something other than they're not. And I find it useful that if you're gonna hate something, you hate life for making all of us stupid and doing stupid things, and then people reacting stupid ways, and then doing other stupid things and all that stuff. And it allows you to accept people for what they are, and that's one thing that we have here, I think, between the three of us. So we were talking about like maybe just doing this not on a show and just doing it together, just getting together and having these conversations.
I like the show.
You like the show? Well, maybe we'll do the show. We're going to talk about it. We'll find out.
I like the
I
show.
think people who watch the show like the show. You few people that you are,
Or-
hopefully more people.
Or they just have nothing better to watch. I'm going to go with that one.
Ugh.
Well, there is that. Maybe it's me. My giving them so much love and encouragement.
Maybe it is you, Red.
Maybe. I mean, I'm your
Maybe it's
3D
Maybelline.
waifu dog. Woof, woof.
In a horse's case, maybe it's Maybelline.
Oh.
Ah.
Yeah.
Boo, boo,
Ah,
boo.
that's no. Don't make that joke again.
So I think no regular outro this time. That's all I'm going to say. And we'll just fade to black. What do you think?